SHALA log 163, September 23rd, 2020. I'm recording this in my parents' garage in Yellowstone County, Montana. The topic today is pain. What is the role of pain in the Ashtanga method? And I want to put on three different lenses to answer that question. Hopefully those three different perspectives will illuminate each other. So most of you know the first 10 years of my practice in Los Angeles, I had a really strict rule for myself that I did not talk about my practice. I was in an environment where very easily, until I came into relationship with Dominic, the asanas were framed as achievements or as projects or even as problems. And being hypersensitive to the way that seemed to cheapen the direct experience of the practice, I had my own response to that. It was also based on, at the time, the opportunity that I was having to do a tremendous amount of seated meditation. And with all that sitting practice, I was in a place where I could take a view of pain that saw it as really transient and really study only on the interior the ways that a sense of self would try to construct itself out of sensations. Sensation, positive or negative, really is a huge seedbed for the construction of the sense of me, I, me, mine. And so in that context, I had a relationship to pain that saw it as transient, as energetic, and really from a mystical standpoint. And that 10 years, I think, was why I'm here today. It's what turned me into a teacher. And cultivating that interiority and the non-sticky relationship with pain, well, there's something to be said for it. And it is absolutely not how I would ever teach, and not actually what I would recommend, for reasons that you already know. It can be disassociative. It can lead to long-term injury from the perspective that we take, which is, what does my 100-year-old body need? And also, when you're in a trusting, non-sticky relationship, pain can be an opportunity to learn more, right? But in that context and in that time, really not talking about pain and viewing it as transient did serve in certain ways. So that's the first perspective. The second perspective, I think, is, well, it comes and goes in the Ashtanga method. It's something that it's worth being sensitive to. The Ashtanga method, I've been around nearly 21 years at this point. There's a polarity within the method between will and surrender, right? And one way to think about how that polarity expresses in our society is between a sort of macho, like extreme of the willful practice, and a very, very passive extreme of the surrender practice. We never want to go to either of those extremes. But especially during times of great delusion in the practice, when we get involved in the sort of culty stuff, where the teacher is seen as some sort of universal, almost deity-like authority, which is something that I went through during the times before we understood that when he was enabled, Patabi Joyce would actually act in abusive ways. Or, in the times when Westerners, particularly American men, have tried to create pedestals that they can sort of surround for their own power. In those times when we lose our bearings in the practice, almost always that corresponds to a very authoritarian relationship with pain. And it has, during those periods, and we'll see them again in this practice, expressed itself with military language around pain. For example, pain is weakness leaving the body, which they tell you in basic if you're in the United States. Right? Pain is temporary, but not just that, it's something that you push through. Right? Pain is an illusion. Pain is actually something that needs to be controlled and driven out of the body. You don't avoid pain, you actually go into pain. This is, the way to counter that extreme sort of macho expression of the practice is actually to bring in more surrender, to deconstruct the delusions of like a perfect authority figure who's going to somehow tell you what to do and make your vinyasas perfect, right? We can all get into that just because of the way the human mind works. But it is a perspective, and especially that actually dysfunctional expression of the perspective of extreme authoritarianism where you push through pain, something to be aware of. But also know that the reaction to that goes into pure extreme receptivity and inaction can, we don't see that quite as much, but we want to find a middle way that actually treats pain without those extremes. So the third perspective, which is the one that I work with here, is, it's really the way that I have come to understand pain in relationship with my teachers. And yet I didn't get explicit about it until 2016 when I built this beginner's course that most of you have been through now. And one of the commitments in that educational design is that if you can invest 2 months with me to build a relationship where I can work to transmit the real fundamentals of the method, if you give that 2 months of investment of time, you could practice by yourself without in-person guidance for a long time to come after that. So that has been the vision of the beginner series. And some of you have taken the beginner series and then you've left, gone around the world and whatever, right? I'm completely happy to teach correctly for 2 months and be like, fly, baby bird. You have the tools to work on your own safely. Awesome. When I figured out that was my goal for the beginner series, right? Basically kicking you out of the nest after 2 months, I had to get really clear on how I taught about pain. And really, pain has come to be the sensory marker that enables me to feel like I can release you responsibly if you have a really nourishing and respectful and non-sticky relationship with pain, which is why from the very beginning, I'm cueing you to, I'm actually modeling. Okay, so do you have pain in the medial meniscus? Is there pain at the top of the hamstring? Is there pain around the collarbone? I'm talking about structures that might correspond to without getting super fearful about it, right? But with the intention that you'll have the tools to scan the body for pain so that you don't do slow damage, especially to the joints, but to the tissues of the body if you're practicing without me or without a teacher who has a lot of knowledge. So pain really becomes this tool for safe, independent, liberated practice. And at the same time, the compromise that I made with that decision was that I created this situation in which you probably experience more pain sort of explicitly in your practice in that first 10 years than I did in my first 10 years. Because I'm constantly asking you, does that hurt? That's nothing anybody ever asked me at the beginning, right? I wasn't taught what in the Western paradigm they'd call nociception, the conscious relationship with pain, right? And the real hazard in this interpretation of like, yes, pain, like scanning for pain can be liberating and can give you all you need to practice on your own safely, because the first principle of this practice is nonviolence, is that we can have a relationship with pain that brings it more to the fore and more into the sense of self, because I have taught you to watch for places that you might feel it that are the tissues talking to you through this perspective of what does your 100-year-old self need. That's part of, the pedagogy of the beginner series is we're here for your life. We're not here to learn asanas. We're here so that your 100-year-old self can be nourished and taken care of, which is something that I've really gotten from my time studying in India. So I just want to say all of that as background for when we're having these conversations now together in the Slack, where you're like, okay, this thing is coming up, Angela, what do I do? I'm never going to tell you what to do. My next question when you ask me what to do is going to take recourse back to your beginner's training and say like, okay, so now here's the sensations we're going to scan for. We're going to have relationships to certain kinds of pain, to inflammation, noticing the effects of practice, so that every time you have that really useful tool of pain introduce itself into your practice, you can come into relationship with it so that you know how to practice tomorrow in a way that's nourishing for the long run of your practice. So that's why I never tell you straight up what to do when you ask me what to do. I ask, well, how can we notice the effects in this situation so that you'll have the tools to figure out next steps? So I'm modeling a kind of curiosity and interest in pain without ever seeing it as a problem, because it's a universal human experience, and also hopefully allowing for some of that, the good side of the view that I took in my first 10 years of pain as transient. It's not always transient. You get pain patterns in the whole sort of mind-body system that are information that you can disattend to if you want to run away from them or actually study for knowledge of the system. And because I want you to feel fully furnished in the tools of the method and fully empowered to practice by yourself without anybody telling you what to do, I ask you to study the pain. So I apologize for being like a huge buzzkill. It's not common in the method, but now I hope it's really clear why I invite you to relate to pain the way that I do. All right. I'm taking off today. I'll be in Cody and Thermopolis, and then on Casper Mountain in Wyoming. So I'm not sure how much of a cell signal I'll have, but I'll see you back on Sunday. All right. Thank you very much.